My stepson shouted he would never follow my rules and would only listen to his mother. I froze his card, canceled his practices, and stopped giving money for entertainment. She was the first one to be shaken. Subscribe and leave your story in the comments. Time to jump right in. You'll never tell me what to do. You're not my dad. Lucas's voice cracked as he shouted it, but the words hit with a clean, brutal edge. They rang through the kitchen like breaking glass, slicing through everything I thought I had built over the last decade. The boy's face burned red with teenage defiance, his chest heaving, his fists tight at his sides as though daring me to push back. Chloe sat at the far end of the table, her thumbs moving across her phone screen like none of it concerned her. But I saw the flicker in her eyes, the satisfaction, the quiet nod of allegiance to her brother. And Monica froze by the sink, her hands submerged in soapy water, staring into the suds as if silence might erase what had just been spoken. But silence is always an answer, and her silence told me everything. I'm Ethan, 43 years old, 10 years married to Monica, 10 years of raising her children as if they were my own. I stepped into their lives when Ryan, the man who gave them his name but nothing else, drifted in and out like a ghost. Holidays, birthdays, the occasional staged photo for the sake of appearances, that was his contribution. The rest of the year belonged to me. I was the one who paid the bills, who worked long hours, who made sure there was food in the fridge, insurance in their wallets, stability under their feet. I thought it mattered. I thought that buying Lucas his cleats when he joined soccer, sitting through Chloe's endless piano recitals, taking them both on trips to places their mother once only dreamed of, Disney, Yellowstone, New York at Christmas, would write me into their lives as more than a placeholder. I believed consistency would be enough, that showing up every day in ways their father never did would build something real. But that afternoon at the kitchen table, Lucas carved the truth into me with his teenage rage. He didn't see a father in front of him. He saw a man trying to enforce rules he had no right to give. You'll never tell me what to do. You're not my dad. The words replayed in my mind as I stood, slowly, deliberately, not giving them the satisfaction of watching me flinch. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. Instead, I walked into my office, the room that had become the command center of this family's survival, and sat down at the desk that held every password, every account, every system I had quietly maintained so their lives ran smoothly. One by one, with hands steady as ice, I dismantled the structure they thought would always hold them up. Lucas's debit card frozen. His gym membership canceled. The streaming accounts he used every night while pretending to ignore me shut down. It took only minutes to erase the illusion of independence he wore like armor. By sundown, he would understand that defiance carries a cost, that respect is the currency on which comfort depends. When I returned to the kitchen, Monica was waiting. The kids had retreated upstairs, Lucas slamming his door hard enough to rattle the frames on the walls, Chloe whispering to him through the crack as if I had become the enemy at the gate. Monica's voice trembled with urgency, but also with something sharper, fear. Ethan, what are you doing? He's just a boy. You can't. I cut her off with a calmness that chilled even me. I can. And I did. She blinked, stunned by the tone. For years, she had known me as the steady one, the man who shouldered every burden with patience. But patience dies when it's fed only disrespect. I looked at her, at the woman I had once rescued from a cramped apartment in Dallas where she worked 2 jobs and still couldn't make rent. I remembered the promises she had whispered when we married, that we would build something real, something lasting. And I realized, with bitter clarity, that I was the only one who had ever kept those promises. Her lips parted as if to plead again, but no words came. She knew the truth. She had let her children treat me as a stranger, and in her silence, she had agreed with them. I turned away, walking down the hall to my office again, each step echoing like a verdict. I sat there for hours, staring at the walls lined with framed photos, vacations, birthdays, graduations, smiles that now felt like masks. Every picture told the same lie, that we were a family, that blood had been replaced by love, that effort had built belonging. But beneath the glossy paper was the truth, and Lucas had spoken it aloud. I wasn't his father. I wasn't Chloe's either. I was only a man financing their lives, tolerated as long as I kept paying. That night, as the house settled into uneasy silence, I thought back on every sacrifice I had made. The late nights at work, the promotions I took not for ambition but for tuition. The weekends I spent fixing up the house instead of living in it. The years I poured into shaping a life that wasn't even mine. And for what? To be told I had no authority? To be dismissed in front of the woman whose silence betrayed me? No more. If I had no authority in this house, then I would no longer pay for its illusions. By the time dawn broke, my decision was final. Lucas would learn what it meant to declare independence. Chloe would see what it meant to side with him in silence. And Monica would discover the weight of standing with her children against the man who had carried them all. The foundation had cracked. The walls were already trembling, and I was done holding up a house built on contempt. When I first met Monica, she was standing in the rain outside a convenience store in Dallas, clutching 2 bags of groceries that looked heavier than she did. She wore exhaustion like a second skin, hair plastered to her cheeks, her face pale with the weight of survival. Behind her in the car, Lucas and Chloe, still small back then, just 8 and 6, were arguing over a toy that had lost half its pieces. I remember the look in her eyes when I offered to carry the bags. Pride and desperation tangled together. She lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment then, the kind where every wall carried the sound of neighbors' lives. The wallpaper peeled, the carpet smelled of mildew, and the children shared a room with bunk beds pushed against a wall that shook whenever someone stomped upstairs. Monica worked mornings as a receptionist and nights waiting tables, her body a constant blur of fatigue. Ryan had long since vanished, leaving her with court orders for child support that arrived less frequently than his excuses. I walked into that life with the confidence of a man who thought love was enough to fix broken things. Within months I moved them into my house, a modest 3-bedroom in the suburbs of Austin, with a garden that smelled of rosemary and fresh-cut grass. It wasn't much by anyone's standard, but to them it was Eden. Lucas ran wild across the backyard, kicking soccer balls until the sun went down. Chloe claimed a corner of the kitchen table for her crayons and drawings, and Monica, for the first time in years, could breathe without counting pennies. Back then, it almost felt like family. We had dinners where laughter came easy, Friday nights curled up with movies, holidays that stitched us together in ways I thought would last. I introduced them to camping, taught Lucas how to ride a bike without training wheels, sat with Chloe as she stumbled through piano scales until her fingers found rhythm. The house echoed with sounds I thought meant belonging. Giggles, music, the soft creak of doors opening in the night when little feet padded into our room after a nightmare. For years, I believed we were building something real. My paycheck carried them, but I told myself it wasn't about money, it was about showing up. About being there when Ryan wasn't. Then, 3 years ago, Ryan returned. It started with whispers. Monica mentioned he was back in town. Her voice careful, testing the waters. He wanted to see the kids, she said. Just a visit. Just to catch up. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I told myself children need their biological father, even if he'd failed them before. Maybe, I thought, they could have both, the man of blood and the man of presence. But Ryan didn't return to be a father. He came back to play the role of a weekend hero. He swept in with shiny toys, gadgets that glowed, promises wrapped in amusement park tickets and fast food bags. He rode roller coasters with them until they were dizzy, filled their hands with shopping bags, flooded their phones with photos of smiling faces. No discipline, no responsibility, just spectacle. And children, blinded by glitter, always choose spectacle over sacrifice. I saw the change almost immediately. Lucas began comparing everything I did to Ryan's effortless fun. If I asked him to mow the lawn, he muttered that Ryan never made him do chores. When I grounded him for skipping homework, he sneered that his real dad would never be so strict. Chloe, once my shadow, now called Ryan her fun dad, introducing me to her friends as just my mom's husband. I tried to ignore it at first, told myself it was normal that teenagers test limits, that they'd see through Ryan's act in time. But their eyes lit up every time his car pulled into the driveway, and darkened when I walked into the room. The balance had shifted. I had been the anchor, but suddenly I was ballast, heavy and unwanted. Monica noticed but said nothing. Her silence was the soil where betrayal grew roots. When Lucas snapped at me, she smoothed it over. When Chloe mocked me, she shrugged, telling me not to take it personally. When Ryan strutted into their lives with cheap charm, she didn't close the door. She opened it wider. And I realized, slowly, painfully, that I was losing not just the children but the illusion I had lived in for years. The nights grew colder. Dinners turned into silences broken only by the clink of forks. Lucas and Chloe retreated into their rooms, their laughter reserved for Ryan's weekends. Monica sat beside me on the couch, her body close but her loyalty distant. I would glance at her, searching for acknowledgement, but her eyes always slid away. One evening, Lucas came home with a new phone. I hadn't bought it. Ryan had. He held it up at the table, grinning, waiting for my reaction. "Look what Dad got me," he said, the word Dad landing like a slap. Chloe chimed in, showing off a bracelet Ryan had given her. "He says he's going to take us to Florida next summer. Just us." I looked at Monica, waiting for her to remind them who kept the lights on, who bought the groceries, who paid the mortgage. She said nothing. The silence confirmed what I had feared all along. The family I thought I had built was only ever an illusion, an arrangement balanced on my labor, vulnerable to collapse the moment a ghost walked back into the room with candy and noise. I began to understand the truth I had resisted for so long. Love is not enough when respect is absent. Sacrifice means nothing when met with indifference. And the illusion of family, no matter how carefully constructed, shatters the instant someone reminds the children that blood, no matter how hollow, runs deeper than presence. That was the beginning of the end. It began with whispers, muttered in corners where they thought I couldn't hear. Then it surfaced in sharper tones, until finally it was thrown in my face. "You're not my dad. You're just my mom's husband." Lucas said it first, spitting the words with the casual cruelty only a teenager can summon. He wanted me to feel small, and for a moment I did. Chloe followed in her own way, less direct but sharper still. She introduced me to her friends with that same phrase, as if rehearsed. "This is my mom's husband, not stepdad, not Ethan, not even the neutral, my mom's partner. Just husband." A word stripped of connection, reduced to legality, nothing more. It was death by 1,000 cuts. Each time I heard it, something inside me withered. Every meal I had cooked, every holiday I had paid for, every sleepless night worrying about their future was erased with a single, dismissive sentence. Then came the family talk, if you can even call it that. Monica had gathered us in the living room, as though unity could be forced with 4 bodies in the same space. I sat on the couch, my jaw tight, while Lucas leaned against the wall, arms crossed, Chloe perched beside her mother. Their eyes burned with contempt, with the arrogance of children who believed they held the upper hand. Lucas spoke first. "You should apologize." I raised my eyebrows. "Apologize? For what?" "For interfering in our lives," Chloe chimed in. "You always try to replace Dad. You act like we don't have one. But we do. And you should say sorry to him. Apologize. To Ryan, the man who had vanished for years, who contributed nothing but broken promises and weekend amusement, who let me shoulder the full weight of his children's lives. Now I was supposed to beg his forgiveness. I turned to Monica then, expecting, hoping, she would defend me, that she would tell them to stop, to recognize what I had given. But she didn't. She stared at the floor, her lips pressed tight, and then, as though she couldn't bear the silence, she added softly, "Maybe you did try too hard to erase their connection with their father. That was enough." In that moment, everything crystallized. I wasn't their father. I wasn't even their stepfather in their eyes. I was just a placeholder, tolerated when convenient, resented when not. The family I thought I had built was a stage play, and they had just torn down the set. I stopped being their sponsor that night. The next morning, I cut ties not with words, but with actions. Lucas's car, mine by title, was taken back. Chloe's prep courses for her exams, paid in advance, were canceled. Their health insurance, my name on the policy, was stripped away. I withdrew the college deposit I had set aside. Money scraped together through years of extra hours, of missed vacations, of sacrifices they would never know. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. If I was nothing to them, then I would stop acting as though I was everything. I made the calls, sent the emails, signed the cancellations. Each step was steady, deliberate. No anger, no shouting. Just the cold severance of a man finally listening to what had been screamed into his face for years. When Monica realized what I had done, panic bloomed. She stormed into the room, her voice trembling. "Ethan, you can't do this. They need insurance. They need those courses. Lucas needs that car." "They don't need me," I said flatly. "They made that clear. They have a father. Let him handle it." Her face went pale. Because we both knew the truth. Ryan couldn't handle it. His paycheck barely covered his rent, his life held together with duct tape and denial. He was the shadow of a man, and now I had turned the spotlight on him. Within weeks, the consequences arrived. Lucas's friends stopped coming around when he lost the car. Chloe cried when she realized she couldn't sit her prep exams. Doctor's bills landed in their laps, heavy and unavoidable. And looming above it all, the brutal weight of tuition fees, medical costs, rent. Every responsibility they had mocked me for assuming was suddenly theirs to face. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I simply watched as reality bared its teeth. Monica begged me to reconsider. She wept, pleaded, tried to remind me of the years we had shared. But every word rang hollow. She had stood by while her children dismantled me piece by piece. And now she wanted me to keep building the life they spat on. No more. The house grew quieter, colder. Lucas sulked in his room. Chloe shut herself away. Monica tiptoed through the halls as though my resolve were a storm she dared not provoke. But it wasn't a storm. It was a clearing. For the first time, I felt free from the weight of illusions. Ryan now had the full set of responsibilities: tuition, medical bills, daily expenses. The weight I had carried alone for over a decade was finally where it belonged. And he wasn't ready. He wasn't capable. The cracks showed immediately. Late payments, angry phone calls, excuses. The children, who once looked at him with shining eyes, now saw what I had always known. Their father was a mirage. A man of gestures, not substance. But by then it was too late. The choice had been made. They had rejected me. And I had listened. Within months, the world they had taken for granted unraveled. Lucas, stripped of his car and card, found himself stranded. The friends who once crowded our driveway for late-night drives or weekend trips vanished as quickly as the fuel in his tank. Without me paying the insurance, his license became a paper threat, worthless in the face of real costs. He walked now, shoulders hunched, muttering curses that carried less rage and more defeat with each passing week. Chloe, my sweet Chloe, who once played piano for me in the living room, was hit harder still. Her prep courses, those carefully chosen programs designed to secure her a place at a university she dreamed of, were gone. When I canceled them, I heard the tremor in her voice as she asked why. I didn't answer. She already knew. She had called me her mother's husband, and now she would discover what it meant to sever that tie. And Monica, who had once looked at me as though I were her salvation, found herself slipping back into the life she thought she had escaped. The mortgage payments I had shouldered, the bills I had quietly covered, the stability I had created, all gone. Within weeks, foreclosure notices arrived. Within months, she lost the house. They scattered then, like leaves in a storm. Lucas and Chloe went to live with Ryan's mother, crammed into a two-bedroom that smelled of old carpets and broken promises. Monica herself packed bags and retreated to her sister's spare room, the woman who had once warned her not to depend on another man. And me? I stayed in the house, alone. The silence was brutal at first. I had grown used to the slam of doors, the patter of footsteps, the half-hearted arguments drifting from upstairs. Now the halls echoed with nothing but the tick of the clock and the hum of the refrigerator. It should have felt like loss. Instead, it felt like truth. For the first time in years, the house belonged to me. Every bill paid was mine alone. Every meal eaten in solitude tasted of honesty rather than pretense. The letters began after the collapse. At first they came from Monica. Please, written in a hand that once penned love notes, now trembling with desperation. She wrote of mistakes, of misunderstandings, of children who didn't mean what they said. She asked me to reconsider, to remember the years we shared, to forgive. I didn't answer. Then the calls came. Lucas first, his voice breaking through the static, unrecognizable without the arrogance. Ethan, I didn't mean it. You know I didn't. I was just angry. Please, I need help. I hung up. Chloe tried next. She cried into the phone, telling me she was sorry, that she hadn't understood, that Ryan couldn't provide what she needed. She begged me to pay for her courses again, to give her another chance. I listened. Then I let the silence answer for me. Because regret born of desperation is not respect. And without respect, I owed them nothing. Ryan called once too. His voice was weary, brittle. You can't just walk away from them, he said, though the irony nearly choked me. He had walked away long before I entered their lives, yet somehow I was the villain for finally doing the same. I told him simply, they're yours now, deal with it. And I hung up. In the quiet that followed, I rebuilt. Slowly, deliberately, I focused on work, on the garden, on the small pleasures that had once been buried under the constant noise of ungrateful mouths. I took trips alone, sat in restaurants where no one sneered at my presence, read books in silence that wasn't heavy but liberating. Piece by piece, I reclaimed myself. But the past has a way of scratching at the door. One evening, nearly a year after they had left, I found Chloe standing on the porch. She looked thinner, older, her eyes rimmed with sleepless nights. She held a letter in her hands, trembling as she extended it toward me. Please, she whispered. Read it. Just read it. I didn't take it. Chloe, I said quietly, you made your choice. You and Lucas both. You chose him. You chose Ryan. And you told me exactly who I was. Nothing. I listened. Now you must live in the world you built. Her lip trembled. We were wrong. We didn't know. I shook my head. You knew enough to wound me. That's all it took. Her tears fell then, splashing against the steps. She begged, pleaded, swore she would make it right. But I had seen enough of apologies born of suffering. I closed the door, leaving her sobs behind me. I haven't seen her since. Now, when I look back, I don't feel triumph. I don't even feel anger. What I feel is clarity. The clarity of a man who finally stopped lying to himself. Family is not blood. Family is not words whispered in convenience. Family is built on actions, on respect, on recognition of sacrifice. I gave them more than their father ever did, more than most fathers ever would. And in return, I was mocked, dismissed, erased. So I did the only thing left to do. I erased them in turn. Today I live alone, but I live honestly. My life is no longer shackled to the weight of thankless dependence. My money, my effort, my care, it belongs to me now. And if anyone wishes to share it again, they will first learn that respect is the price of admission. Was I cruel? Perhaps. Was I heartless? They would say so. But tell me, what would you have done? Would you keep paying for children who called you a stranger? Would you keep building a house on a foundation of contempt? I chose to walk away, and for the first time in years I am free.